Hey guys, welcome back to another impressions video to talk about The Forgotten City, a game released in 2021 by Modern Storyteller, I believe is the developer. And this game has a very interesting providence in the sense that it was originally a Skyrim mod. You know, Skyrim obviously is a game that, hugely popular game released in 2013, and The Forgotten City was a labor of love, by a fan that created a mod back in 2015, and it's one of the most downloaded mods for Skyrim, to the point that he decided to quit his daytime job, which this guy was a lawyer nevertheless, and decided to fund his own studio for developing video games. And 6 years later, here we are with the release of The Forgotten City, which is obviously based on that mod, but it expands obviously on the characters and the story. Personally, I didn't play the mod, although I'm interested now in checking it out. But obviously, the proper game that has been released now is the best way to explore or to experience the story, because obviously it's a standalone game. So a very interesting story that I decided to check it out. I had this game on my wish list actually because I did hear some good things about the game. And then, courtesy of Game Pass, this game got released on Game Pass, so I decided to try it on that platform. But I will be purchasing this game. I'm sure I'm going to be double dipping because this is definitely one of the most pleasant surprises of 2021 for me personally, because I really enjoyed this game for what it is. For the story, for the adventure elements, and just overall how much the game respects your time. I think it was a very concise experience that I highly recommend to everyone checking it out, especially if you have Game Pass. And if not, this game is out for a multitude of systems, including PC, I think PS4, PS5, and even Nintendo Switch. I believe through the cloud service of the Nintendo Switch, this game can be played on that system as well. So no excuses. This game can be played on just about every system, and I believe it's also a kind of like a quote-unquote budget title. I think the MSRP for this game is $30. So yeah, it's up for everyone to enjoy. And again, it's on Game Pass. So basically what this game is, it's a first-person mystery adventure game that will have you spend, I'd say, 60 to 70% of the time just walking around this city, asking people questions and talking to people, getting some, dialogue trees going on, and just having you solve mysteries in this very interesting setting of the Forgotten City. The game has combat. In the game later you get a bow and arrow, but the combat really is not the bulk of the game. It's more talking to people and solving mysteries and whatnot. That to me was actually the most interesting aspect about the game, because when I heard that the game doesn't have much of combat at all, being a first-person game, that really spiked my interest. Just because every time you hear first-person game, you have to have a good combat system, good gunplay. Typically games in first-person are either shooters or games that are completely devoid of much of gameplay elements, like walking simulators and so forth. So this was a very unique type of gameplay setting for me personally. So that alone spiked my interest, and I decided to check this game out as it is. So story-wise, this game, I'm not going to spoil obviously the story. I'm just going to say that I was very pleasantly surprised by the story of this game. It's one of the strongest points in this game. There are multiple endings. I believe there are 4 different endings, and I got 3 of them, including I don't know if I should call it the true ending, but I think it's the best ending because it's the longest one. But I still have one ending missing that I do want to go back and check it out. I haven't figured out how to get that ending yet, at least. But yeah, the story, the game starts with you waking up like on the riverside, and you are met by this girl named Karen, and it's very weird because just like any or just like a multitude of RPGs out there, you don't remember anything. You're suffering from memory loss, which is a kind of like a recurring theme going on for RPGs in the gaming world. But she asks you to go and look out for her friend Al Worth, I believe his name is, that got lost exploring some nearby ruins. So as you start exploring the ruins, you find yourself transporting back in time to the Roman Empire, like setting and time, and you make your way to this place, known as the Forgotten City, which is a very a closed city with no like exit really, and that has this thing called the Golden Rule being applied, in which if one citizen within the city commits a sin, everyone dies, everyone pays for it, everyone will turn into a gold statue. So it's a very interesting concept because there are no laid out rules as far as what the sins that qualify, or I guess acts that qualify as a sin are spelled out for you. So none of the citizens really know what those sins are, for to activate the punishment by the gods. So it's up to you in a way to find that out. Killing, obviously it's a very severe sin, so that obviously qualifies. But there are some other sins that are in between, in a gray area, that are very interesting to figure it out, if they're part of or not of that golden rule. And so you have about 20 plus citizens that inhabit this forgotten city that are just trapped in there, and they're living with the fear and the paranoia of this golden rule. Some of the citizens are a little bit, I guess, starting to doubt if this thing even exists. Some of them are very, paranoid and, abide by it, obviously. So you're greeted by this guy called Galerius. He kind of shows you the city around, and then you meet the different citizens, by talking to them. One of the main characters is Sentius. He's kind of like the current, I guess, emperor of the city. And then you soon realize there will be an election day, that the same day that you arrive at the city. So at that point, the game opens up in a multitude of ways. When you talk to Sentius, he lets you know that it's election day. He asks for your help because he thinks he's a little bit behind in the polls. So you have that option to try and convince people to re-elect Sentius, or you have the option to convince people to pick other candidates for the position, which is very interesting. And as you talk to different people, I guess the main goals that the game sets for you are, for one, is to escape the city and return back to your normal, I guess, time frame. That's like the number one goal. But there are other goals that are also interesting, such as finding out what the golden rule is, what breaks the golden rule, what's going on in this place. Why are you moved back in time all the way to the Roman Empire setting, and things like that. And as you talk to NPCs in the game, you will find out, about different side quests. Side quests that are, some of them are like very interesting. Like, for example, one of the first NPCs that I talked to was Sentius's daughter, which she explains that her sister has gone missing. So you start trying to find out clues on what happened to her. You start talking to people that were close to her. So you're trying to figure it out if she's dead, or if she managed to escape. There was a rumor that she knew how to find an exit to the Forgotten City, which supposedly it's a sealed city. There's no exit, but supposedly she found a way to escape, and hence why she's missing from the city. So that piqued my interest. How can I try and escape? So I you start looking for clues about the whereabouts of this character, and there's several side quests like that just increase your curiosity. Different types of characters, from common folks, common people that work in the towns or in the cities, town square, in the marketplace. People of different social classes, if you will. Working class people, kind of like you have your elite diplomats and politicians, and a little bit of everything. Even though the city only has like 20 plus inhabitants, you will find a little bit of everything. So yeah, without spoiling the story, I personally enjoyed it a lot. I think there are a lot of themes that the game covers in a very interesting way. Most importantly, I think morality. The game really challenges your, I guess, thoughts and impressions of what morality is. Especially this one NPC that you meet in the game, where you actually have like a one-on-one conversation, and the tree dialogue that you have with him is extremely interesting, because you start like really debating about like, I don't know, like philosophy and morality and what's ethical, what's not ethical. And I had a lot of fun, talking to this particular NPC, and it was just very interesting and very unique. Something different from other games, in my opinion. That I played as of late. So the story, again, A plus. It's one of the most gripping elements of the game, and it just wants you to, you keep playing the game to find out what the heck's going on in this particular forgotten city. In terms of the soundtrack, surprisingly, despite being this is truly an indie game, the soundtrack is actually very good. The main theme of the game is amazing, actually. Like, the limited soundtrack in this game is very appropriate. Let me just put it that way. The game also features a full voice acting, which I thought it was pretty cool. So all the characters are voice acted, and it adds to the game. It adds to the to the personality of all the NPCs, and it ups the kind of like the overall quality of the game, in my opinion. Even though it's an indie game, I appreciated the fact that it's fully voiced, and that just helps a little bit in terms of getting through the dialogues, in my opinion, within this game. Graphically, the game is not like an A plus or an elite looking game. Even though I believe this game uses the Unreal Engine, some of the facial expressions and animations are a little bit weird. This game has that typical, I guess, Bethesda, Skyrim or Oblivion type of, you see the characters up close when you're talking to them, similar to the Outer Worlds, for example, similar to the Fallout games, where you focus your eyesight on characters. And I thought that was interesting. And this game is no exception to that. But the facial animations are not top notch. The motion capture is not like The Last of Us 2 or something like that. But nevertheless, I thought it was a more than appropriate and good enough, in my opinion. But the game does excel in terms of the overall art. I think the city itself, it's really well done, despite the limitations of the Unreal Engine, and this being a indie, somewhat of a budget game. I think they did a beautiful job. There are certain areas of the city that have very interesting settings, with like waterfalls or some trees and lush green areas, and then some temples and things of that nature that I thought look very interesting and very appropriate for the type of game that it is. So graphically, I think the game it gets a very good grade for me personally. And then gameplay, as I mentioned before, this game is basically an kind of like a talking game, if you will. That may sound boring, but I think it's worth giving it a shot, because it's this story that really pulls the game together. It's the story between the characters and the NPCs that you meet that really draw the attention to the game. As I mentioned, you do get a bow and arrow. There are some, I guess, weapon sections in the game where you use your bow and arrow to defeat enemies. It also adds this game adds a little bit of a horror element, because some of the enemies in the game, the way you use your bow and arrow, the enemies turn into gold, basically. So if you do a headshot, it's a one hit kill, or the enemies turn into gold immediately. But if you hit them in the body, you have to hit them a couple times, maybe like three or four times. You know, 3 or 4 arrows in the body. And these games are running towards you. You know, like desperately with their hands, kind of like giving a gesture of attacking you, obviously. And sometimes the impulse is to go for a headshot, but obviously headshots are very hard, because the enemies are running towards you, their heads are moving. It's a very small portion of the body, so if you miss that first shot, that gives you very little time to hit the body. And the game has this horror element. If you get hit a couple of times, you'll die. Obviously, this game has a time loop mechanic, which is the kind of like the next gameplay element that I wanted to discuss. So even if you die, the checkpoints are very spread out throughout the game. You're not going to be repeating huge chunks or sections of the game. But the time loop mechanic is very interesting in terms of solving the puzzles. And if the golden rule is broken for whatever reason, and sometimes it has to be broken actually, that's all I'm going to say in terms of that extent of the gameplay mechanics. But if it's broken, you can always use the time loop mechanic to just go back in time. And the way the game handles the repetition is incredibly good. So you get to keep the items that you already found, so you don't have to repeat sections of the game to find certain items. You keep key items with you, so you don't have to repeat that. And the game does a very clever use of some of the NPCs to do things that you have already done. So if you die, you can redo the same things in a very quick fashion. It's hard to explain, but I think this game addresses a lot of the complaints that people found in other loop games. Namely, I think there's a game called 12 Minutes or something that's also on Game Pass that I do want to play, but one of the complaints is that if you die and you do that loop mechanic, you have to repeat the same things that you've been doing, whereas the Forgotten City does a really good job in expediting that process for you in a very quick and realistic way, which is, the game gets high points for doing that from my point of view. But it's a really hard game to explain. I hope, hopefully you guys enjoyed this impressions video. This is a game that really has to be played to be understood fully. And I strongly suggest that you guys give it a shot, because the game, one of the things that I really liked about the game is that it respects your time in a very good way. The game can be completed, I want to say, between 5 and 10 hours. Getting some of the endings are easier, so you may be closer to that 5-hour mark. But if you're like me and you want to get all the endings and just interact with all the NPCs and getting a little bit soaked in this Roman, Greek, and Egyptian culture, because there's a lot of cultures involved in mythology in this game, you're going to be around that 10-hour mark. But even at the 10-hour mark, that's not a huge time investment. I think the game is very, very concise. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about this game. The story is incredibly solid. The game respects your time. It's very well condensed, and the NPCs are likable, and the endings were for the most part of my satisfaction. So I hope you guys give this game a shot. It's one of the pleasant surprises of 2021 for me personally, and I wouldn't mind replaying this game sometime next year. So with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all later. Take it easy.